It is your doctor here once again in the X layer to provide you with a treatment for the terrible disease you've been enduring, which scientists have now called X-Men Statue Withdrawal Syndrome. There's no proper acronym for it yet, but there will be. Uh, Today's treatment is going to hopefully at least get you through the day and maybe even the night. Maybe not. Maybe you need to check out another video tonight to help you. Um, this is the very cool brown costume museum statue of Wolverine by Bowen Designs. It's a very elegant piece. There isn't much to it as far as like bells and whistles. It's just brown costume Wolverine in a very sort of like reserved pose. He's just kind of standing there, just kind of being like, "I'm tough. You know, you can't screw with me. I'm gonna kick your butt if you try to, kill the X-Men or steal my girl, my Japanese girlfriend, Yuriko. I think it was Yuriko, or is that Lady Deathstrike? I don't know. I should read more Wolverine. Actually, I don't read that much Wolverine on his own. I've always been more of like a fan of Wolverine within the X-Men. So the the actual solo series that he's been in haven't ever really caught my personal attention. But he's one of my favorite characters. Obviously, he's an X-Man. Coming up soon, right now, it's June of 2013. We've got The Wolverine coming, which is going to be a movie told after X3, in which Logan goes to Japan and like he meets with the Silver Samurai and all sorts of crazy stuff is going to happen. It's supposedly going to be based on the Frank Miller story that kind of chronicles like his like trek through that area. So through that time period, through that country, and all the various interesting things that happened to Logan as a result of being in that environment. It's hopefully going to be really good. I've got my fingers crossed in an X formation, hoping that it's going to be a great movie. We shall see, ladies and gentlemen. We shall see. In fact, you might have already seen this movie because you're in the future, and I'm talking to you from the past. And you are lucky, and I hope you guys are satisfied, and I hope you have it on Blu-ray and you've had repeat viewings of it. And X-Men Days of Future Past was also incredible, and there's like the promise of too many more X-Men movies coming out. I hope. I hope. Okay, this is like too much hoping and maybe inappropriate for a statue video. All right, well, let's talk about this statue, shall we? I know it was sculpted by Randy Bowen. That's for sure, and he did a really nice job with it. Um, there are 1,500 of these in existence. This is number 371. It was produced in 2008. So this is like 5 years ago now. This is actually one of two variants of this exact statue. The other one is just this statue in with Logan in his tiger striped out. No, actually no. There's three of these. There's three of these. So there's this one. There's him in his tiger striped outfit with like the black stripes along the side, and there's like blue elements and yellow elements. Similar to the action Wolverine statue that I've already posted on my blog, but just in this exact pose. And then the third version is an unmasked version of this statue with Wolverine just like he has his mask pulled back and you can see Logan's face. For some reason, that one never really caught my attention too much. I did actually have the tiger striped masked version of this statue. And I actually got rid of it because this was like in the era when I was just collecting one statue per character. And because I was getting another Wolverine statue, I thought it was excessive to have two Wolverine statues, and so I sold that one off. But in hindsight, I probably should have kept it because I really like that statue as well. Like I like this statue; it's really nice. It is Wolverine in like a very sort of elegant pose, elegant design, and definitely works as like a very cool sort of Wolverine statue in a variety of settings. Um, One thing that comes along with the statue is like this riser, so it helps it to be kind of taller. Um, I actually don't display him with the riser. I actually use this riser for another character. Uh, modern Modern Rogue actually is the one that I have using this to because she's like flying. Not Modern Rogue, 80s Rogue. because she's like flying, and it just makes her look like she's flying higher, and it looks great. And he actually looks shorter, which he should. I think the reason why this riser is included is because Bowen Designs has like this clause in their contract with Marvel that says that they need to produce um, statues that are minimum 1 foot tall, and so Randy's always trying to figure out ways to satisfy that requirement, especially on statues of maybe like Wolverine, who scale wise is actually shorter, and if you want to represent him properly relative to the other statues that are produced of the other characters, as far as height goes, you want to make him shorter. And so in order to make sure that happens properly in a museum pose like this, he includes his riser. Works. And again, you can opt to use it or not. I opt not to use it, but it's still like a useful sort of thing to have in your collection in order to maybe use it for other statues, like I do. All right, so this is a very cool statue. You got the brown boots with the spiky sort of tips at the end, just like classic Wolverine design. The legs sculpted very nicely. The yellow parts with orange shading done very nicely. Then you got the brown granny underwear, which is great. You got the red belt, nicely done. You got the top of the costume with like the edges that come down to his bicep and tricep, kind of like the deltoid that covers the deltoids. Looks great. All the brown part looks very nice. There's like some shading in there. There's some nice sort of sculpting for the musculature done very well. You got the brown gloves, and of course the claws look very nice, and the mask done very well. It's got the two classic like big tips. I actually would like somebody to do a like bigger tipped mask, like McFarlane drew Wolverine. He did a really interesting sort of version of Wolverine, specifically in the Spider-Man ongoing series that McFarlane started right before he left Marvel to join Image, to start Image. Um, he he had actually done like like a 5 story series w- that involved Wolverine. It also involved Wendigo, and it had Wolverine in this costume, and it had like his mask like super exaggerated and like it was big and crazy and awesome because everything McFarlane draws is awesome. In my book, I know some people hate McFarlane, but I love him and I love everything he did, and I wish somebody would produce a statue based on his art because his art is great. This is actually very close to that, and I like this. I'm not saying this is bad, but I mean, there's certain elements of the character design that others have used that I think would work better for a statue like this. Um, so this design for Wolverine is like pretty important, like in the 80s, and then it kind of went away in the 90s when Jim Lee started X-Men Volume 2 with Chris Claremont, and they and I think essentially like in that new volume of X-Men, he did have the brown costume for like 3 issues, and then he went back to the yellow and like the yellow tiger striped outfit. And I think that was because they were trying to coordinate with the designs of the 90s cartoon that was just being released as well. Maybe they felt that it would work better just with the other characters, the overall design, the yellow and the blue, rather than this costume. So this costume went away pretty quickly as soon as the cartoon started airing. But there were a lot of really important moments in the 90s, um, in the 80s, and the early 90s that had Wolverine in this costume. And in fact, this is how I was first introduced to Wolverine. I remember seeing covers like this cover of like the Wolverine miniseries, classic. This is probably one of my favorite Wolverine covers. This is a Wolverine miniseries that was written by Chris Claremont and it was drawn by Frank Miller. Frank Miller, as you all know, is famous for a bunch of things, but as far as like just like film, he well, I mean, he wrote 300, right? And then Zack Snyder made 300 based on Frank Miller's artwork that he also drew in the 300 series. Um, and Sin City, that was Frank Miller's. I believe he wrote and maybe even drew that. And now, right now it's June, roughly June of 2013. Sin City: A Dame to Kill For, the sequel to Sin City, is coming out like at the end of the year. Again, directed by Robert Rodriguez, based on the Frank Miller works. So Frank Miller has really sort of taken off beyond comics and kind of become like a pop cultural icon, which is great. Um, but like this oh wow this series, which is like seminal Wolverine, which I actually haven't read completely. I should, but I haven't. I only have like this issue. Um, I don't even know what story is being told in here. This might actually be the Japanese story that's being told in the movies. This is written by Chris Claremont, but drawn by Mr. Frank Miller, and this was released in 1982. This was the first miniseries that featured Wolverine. Just like you can see in the first panel, it's just such fantastic artwork. And throughout this comic, we see Wolverine in the brown costume. And here he is like fighting some or like training like with some ninjas or like training to be a ninja or something along those lines. That's why I think that this might actually be the story that's told in the movies, in the Wolverine movie that's coming out. Um, but this is like a really important miniseries as far as Wolverine goes, and iconic, and has him in the brown costume. So you know, it, this costume is important for Wolverine. Um, then, of course, just moving forward a bit. So that was 1982. So this is 1989. This is the very first issue that Jim Lee did of Uncanny X-Men. Jim Lee, who basically changed the design of the X-Men, revolutionized comic book art. He's a revolutionary without a doubt. This is Uncanny X-Men number 248, and the very first panel is this most incredible piece of art of Wolverine in the brown costume. Look at that. Look at that. Man, it's just so good. It gives me goosebumps. Like just looking at this art is just like so freaking amazing. I wish Jim Lee would stop being Mr. freaking DC and come back to Marvel and start drawing the X-Men again, because that would be so great. But he did such a great job in the 90s of drawing the X-Men. I mean, obviously, like the late 80s, early 90s. Um, and it, and oh, so that was actually just a cyborg that Donald Pierce um, and Lady Deathstrike were fighting of Wolverine. But still, I mean, this is the costume he had during this era. And the Reavers. The Reavers are like Donald Pierce's like minions, who are all like kind of part cyborg, part human. This is a really great time for the X-Men, and Jim Lee drew it, and we had Wolverine in the brown costume. Fast forward slightly, like maybe a year, to the Extinction Agenda. One of the great freaking one of the great crossovers of like the early '90s, um, for the various X-Men titles. This is X Factor number 62, Extinction Agenda Part 9. And you can see this cover was actually drawn by Jim Lee, and there's Wolverine in the brown costume, fantastic. And you got Havoc, and you've got Jubilee. Here's Iceman back here, and Jean in her yellow and red costume, and Cyclops in his blue and white costume, and of course freaking Cable. I mean, this is such a great cover. I love it. And again, so Wolverine throughout the Extinction Agenda, there were actually a lot of really great covers with Wolverine in the brown costume. There's actually one of New Mutants, because New Mutants was also one of the comics that were involved in the crossover of Extinction Agenda, and it has like him like fighting Cable, and he's got the brown costume, and it's done by Rob Liefeld. And I know people hate Rob Liefeld or whatever, but he's done some really great work, and he did some really great work in New Mutants, like towards the end of that run before he transformed it into X-Force. So kudos to him. And of course, finally, of course, we have probably one of the most impressive appearances of Wolverine in the brown costume, and that's here in X-Men number 1. So X-Men number 1, as some of you know, X-Men number 1, X-Men Volume 2, number 1, the sort of really important release of the second ongoing series for the X-Men in the 90s, in which the X-Men were split into two different groups. This was written by Chris Claremont and drawn by Jim Lee. There were 5 covers made of this comic, and they all kind of like, so 4 of them like made one big image, and then this one, this was the 5th version. It kind of had like a gatefold cover, and it merged all 4 of the covers into one big like splash sort of cover, which is fantastic. I love it. It's one of the best pieces of artwork to ever be drawn of the X-Men as a team. You know, with Magneto also. Um, it's just fantastic. Like, here's the back. You see freaking Gambit and Psylocke and Rogue and Colossus drawn as great as they can be drawn. Here we've got Cyclops and Iceman, and of course Wolverine. He looks fantastic. Jim Lee is just the man, and Jim Lee drawing Wolverine in this costume is fantastic. So let me give him one more spin here. So this is like a really like a fan favorite design of Wolverine. Like, people always want statues made of Wolverine in this costume. There's actually another um, statue that Bowen Designs produced of Wolverine in this costume, which I have, which is a variant of the classic action statue that I've already posted on my blog. But that one has him unmasked. I like it, but I don't love it. I think the face is not exactly as I would have wanted it to be, but overall I really like the statue. It looks great, and it's in the brown costume. But more brown costume Wolverines need to be released. Actually, Bone Designs has sneaked one, like a digital image of one that they're sort of planning to release, but that was like back in November. Right now it's almost the middle of the year. We haven't seen any updates on that, so it may or may not happen. Hopefully it does, because the more brown costume Wolverine, the better as far as I'm concerned. And Sideshow Collectibles was going to do a variant of their premium format figure of Wolverine that came out in the tiger striped outfit in his brown costume, but they never released it. Weird. Kotobukiya, who released a Danger Room Sessions version of Wolverine in his tiger stripe costume, also actually sneaked in like a comic convention a brown costume variant of that statue. There's photos of it online. People have demanded it. Kotobukiya decided not to produce it. I don't know why. It's sad that they decided that, because it would have been a great statue to have. I think I actually would have bought that one as well, because I didn't love the Kotobukiya Wolverine statue, but for some reason in the brown costume it looks really nice. Looks really nice. All right, folks, here's one last twirl so you can... I think this is the second one last twirl. I think I already did a last twirl, so just to... Actually, there's a couple... There's like hairs drawn on his arm, which are really nice. The muscles on his arm are done really well. Like, the shading of the arms is done really well. And there's a bunch of course, close-ups of all the body parts on my blog. So check those out if you're interested in seeing more details of this statue. It's really nice. It's elegant. It doesn't take up too much room in a display, and it can fit in an 80s display or a 90s display. Either one works. Or if you're just doing Wolverine, it works. Or if you want to just have one Wolverine statue, this is a good choice. It doesn't go for too much. I think it's less than $150. I think. I haven't checked recently, but I think it's reasonably priced still and accessible. So if you want it, go after it. All right, folks. Thank you for checking all my stuff out. Thanks for checking out my blog. My blog is X-Men Statues of Future Past.blogspot.com. My YouTube channel is Dr. Remy LeBeau's X-Lair. And as always, X in the box, folks, because ain't nobody checking me. I'll catch y'all very soon. Take care of yourselves, and goodbye.